Welcome everyone to the Search Term Chart Best Practices webinar from Prestozon. We hosted this in June, just about a month ago, for our agency partners, and it was really successful. Lots of great questions. As you all know, we launched this feature in May. It's something that you can access on our Pro, Enterprise, and Agency Partner plans. So many of you probably know we launched a core service for those that have less than $10,000 of spend and just need a more pared down version that will help focus on your top targets. So we'll touch on that and just kind of catch you up on what's new at Prestozon, but let's do this. If I can get my slides to work. There we go. All right, so welcome. This is Sanaz. I'm Chief Revenue Officer at Prestozon, and joining me today we have Dierk, who most of you probably know, and if you don't, you should drop him a note and his team at support@prestozon.com to answer your questions on ad strategy or how to get the best in terms of your campaign management and performance for your accounts within Prestozon. Obviously, any technical support, the team can help there too, but we really love digging into the strategy stuff. So we'll be doing plenty of that today. So we just wanted to say hi while we were on video so that you know that we're real people. I know with everybody kind of still on lockdown, it's always nice to see a name, well, a face with the name at least, or a face with the name, yeah. But we'll go ahead and turn off the video so that I can stop stumbling over my words and we can focus on the content that we want to share with you today. So, all right. Quick housekeeping. If you guys have questions, which we hope that you've got lots of questions, feel free to just hit the Q&A tab in your Zoom panel and pop the questions in there and we'll answer them for you. Pretty straightforward. If you've got questions on the search term chart, great. If you have non-search term chart questions, then we can answer those towards the end for you. So what are we going to cover today? Just wanted to give you a quick update on kind of what's new at Prestozon, a quick introduction to the search term chart, and then Dierk's going to jump into some insights within the platform, walk you through some specific examples on how to really understand what it is that we're presenting to you and how to take action on it. It looks cool, but we want to make sure that you know how to use it. And there's so many different things that you can gather from these charts in terms of really driving more efficiency and having more control. So just a quick overview. I know most of you know us, but many of you are also part of our Prestozon Agency Partner Network. We also have similar partner benefits for enterprise partners. So if you have multiple brands that you're managing, definitely reach out and let us know how we can help. There's some additional kind of benefits that we provide there. On the solutions front, you're all probably very familiar with our automation management and software platform, but for those of you that are on the agency or enterprise side, we also offer custom white label options where you can have your own branded interface of Prestozon, as well as advanced reporting services. So we know reporting is always important and there's never a one size fits all, but we've got a couple of different options there if reporting has been a pain for you. As you mostly know, our client portfolio is a mix of agencies and sellers and vendors. So we support both sellers and vendors within the platform and all of the current marketplaces that Amazon has available through the Amazon Advertising API, which is just how we connect and communicate with Amazon. So as new marketplaces become available, we tend to be one of the first, if not the first, to implement them. So hopefully we'll have some new marketplaces coming up soon. Lots of exciting things coming from Amazon. So with what's new, I also just wanted to touch on, I know we mentioned core a little bit. So this year we launched our core offering, which is something that's been very popular with our author community and advertisers that are getting started that need a little bit more focus and don't need the full capabilities of Prestozon Pro. So you can just see kind of a quick overview there. If you've got less than $10,000 a month of ad spend and you want something that's a bit more focused and simple to start out with so that you can grow into Pro with some additional capabilities, here's kind of the quick overview, and you can also see some of the things that we're offering on the enterprise side as well. Just wanted to give you a quick overview there. Back to the content. For those of you that are agency partners or potential enterprise partners, for us, it's really imperative to support the success of our partners and to make sure that we provide you the necessary resources to succeed managing your ad accounts on Prestozon. So whether it's extending strategic advice or training and resources from our team, or extending the benefits of our Amazon advertising relationship and partner status. So getting access to betas and new features and ad types and new functionality. And also just providing introductions and networking. So if you're a seller or a vendor who needs a bit of help on the managed services side, you know that Prestozon is fully focused on providing you the best Amazon PPC software, but we have an amazing partner network, all types of agencies from Amazon PPC to full stack, where you can literally outsource your entire Amazon business, e-commerce agencies that are in channels outside of Amazon. So if there's ever anything that you need, don't hesitate to reach out to us, and we're happy to help facilitate introductions. And we always love to give a simple reminder about why focus on search terms. You know, this is really one of the things that makes Prestozon unique. When our co-founders started out as Amazon sellers, they quickly realized that they should leverage their software development skills to build a faster, more efficient, simple way to manage Amazon PPC. And Ben, who's our CEO, is a data scientist and a whiz when it comes to Amazon PPC and really figuring out how it works. And because when we started Prestozon, we literally built the platform for Amazon PPC, not adapting it from another channel, we realized that the best way to drive control and efficiency and performance was really to be able to have control at the search term level. So I know many of you are probably familiar with our search term isolation strategy, where I know it doesn't apply for every single ad account or every single campaign, but the ability to really have more control from the search term level as opposed to the keywords, which you're really just using for bids. So we built all of our data up from that search term level, and you can see our little picture there with the Amazon search bar. That's your search term. It's exactly what the consumer is typing in when they're shopping, and that's how they're going to find your products. Dierk, do you want to give maybe just a quick intro to what the goal of the search term chart is in terms of providing that visibility and kind of that visualization of what's happening with your search terms?
Yeah, definitely. So the idea behind the search term chart was we wanted to give a visualization that we don't think is out there anywhere, which is a visualization of your search term over time across all of the different targets where that search term is firing in an account. And the reason that's powerful is because you can then make real sort of strategy decisions based on what you see in terms of the search term performance on these multiple, across multiple targets, if it is firing on multiple targets. And so it really kind of highlights, why search term isolation is important, how much control you can get or loss of control you can have if you've got too many targets. And it can really just, it shows you so many things that you just couldn't see before. I mean, we're going to walk through a lot of specific examples over the course of this webinar, but, being able to see, a search term fell into a non-relevant campaign and that's why my performance went down. Things like that you wouldn't be able to see anywhere else, and this search term chart now gives you visibility onto those sorts of things.
So Dierk, with the search term chart, has it made it faster and more straightforward for you when you're analyzing our clients and partners' accounts to help them in terms of strategy? Has it kind of sped things up for you a little bit, made it easier with the visualizations?
In some ways it has sped it up, but in other ways it's made it longer because it's just so interesting. I almost never, pretty much every time I go into the search term chart, I find something really cool and interesting to look at. So in that sense, it actually kind of takes me longer sometimes because I just get lost in the data. But in terms of being able to visualize things that you just couldn't visualize before, or sometimes I would get to say something to someone and say, hey, I think this is what's happening on your account, but I couldn't actually show them the proof that, like, see, this is what's happening here. And it just gives this whole other dimension of what we're able to show in terms of management on a search term level.
Yeah, I think that the aspect that I really like, I'm a very visual person. And so talking to people about how your impressions are shifting from, one keyword to another, being able to actually show the search term chart and show how the traffic shifts across, like, oh, here's what your impressions look like across these specific search terms and your specific targets. And here's how they're changing over time. It's, for me, I really like that that aspect of the visualization, kind of just the quick and simple ability to take a look and have an answer that quickly. Well, with that, do you want to jump into the platform? Ooh.
Yeah, let's do it. So I will see if I can take control here. All right, so you should be able to see my screen here. And so I'm in our staging environment just to kind of give you some navigation tips in terms of looking at the search term chart, where to find it and things like that. Unfortunately, staging data isn't super interesting. So once we go through the navigation in the platform, I'll switch over, back to the presentation, and I'll show you some real world examples, with just some really cool, interesting data. And so starting off here from just the standard charts page, this is typically where you are landing when you're opening up Prestozon. And from there, I'm going to hop over to the Search Term Explorer. And here, right now, I've got the keyword expansion expanded, but I'll do that again in a second. And so here, it's right here. So there's this little sort of chart icon next to all of your search terms. If you've been with us for a long time, this is relatively new for you. And so from here, you can click in and it opens a new tab automatically so that you've got your settings here. So you can theoretically go through, and click, 5 different search terms that you want to look at to see what's going on. In terms of finding interesting data, I actually suggest expanding out this keyword expansion. And this now shows, all of the different targets that are hitting that particular search term. And so you can decide, oh, Magic Wand has, 7 or 8 different targets. So I specifically want to look at that one, because it might give me more interesting data. From here, now you are in the search term chart. You can see sort of a similar structure that we have with the charts, where you've got 2 different charts so that you can see a bunch of different metrics all at the same time. We've got spend and impressions here. I might want to switch this to sales. Down below, the default is this line chart, but I actually really love this stacked bar chart. And so you can see here, the stacked bar chart really shows you the breakdown across all the different targets. The targets here are color coded, and then you can see down below, this matches to the targets. And if you scroll over, just like anywhere else in the platform, if you scroll over this little icon, you can see where these targets are, what campaigns they're in, ad groups, what the bid is, etc. And so, those are kind of the nuts and bolts. There's different breakdown levels. You can break by ad group or campaign. You can set different max breakdown targets so that, right now we've got it broken down by the top 5, and then everything else below that is aggregated. But you could set it to 10. We had to put a limit on it to 10 just because it's really data heavy to break those out, but you can go up to 10. You can set how you're sorting, whether it's by spend or impressions, direction. There's a whole gambit of things that you can do here. One other navigation thing that's important to note is this little chart button goes to the search term detail page, but the chart button is also next to keywords as well. And this brings you to a slightly different page, a page that's possibly a little bit more familiar to people that have worked with Prestozon for a long time. This brings you to the keyword detail page. The keyword detail page is something that we've had in Prestozon for a long time. Still a, in my opinion, underutilized and super important aspect of PPC management. It shows you your bid history over time. So you can see here this red line, this is your bid level going up and down over time. You can actually change your current bid here. You can see metrics, dedicated to this target. And this really works very well in tandem with the search term chart, because not only do you have the search term chart here and then the keywords down here, but then you also have access to that keyword detail page. So you can go and you can look and say, hey, what happened to red here? All of a sudden red comes and the impressions just drop off a cliff. So maybe I want to come in and I want to click on that chart button next to that red target, and I can see what's going on and say, oh, look at this. We've got a huge bid drop right around May 5th. And if I go back May 5th, right, it just lines up exactly where, yeah, of course the impressions dropped off a cliff, right? We brought the bid down, some crazy amount. So, we went from 66 cents down to, it looks like 24 cents. And so clearly, there is a reason for that change. And just that, that was so easy, right? To just say, oh, look, there's a change here. Let's see what caused that change. This would have been so much investigation in the past. And now it's just kind of at the tip of your fingertips. So really powerful. And in just a moment here, I'm going to hop back into the presentation and start going through some specific examples of really interesting scenarios. Before I do that, Sanaz, did I miss anything with the navigation in the platform? Is there anything else you want to make sure we highlight?
Well, I guess I just wanted to call out that that was a great tip. I think the icon for the chart is the same, but you probably know that if there's the little magnifying glass next to it, it's a search term. So that icon for the chart next to the search term will take you to this search term detail page with the search term chart. Whereas if you're going to hit that same chart icon next to a keyword, it's going to take you to the keyword bid history. And that's something that we start storing for you from the minute that you connect your account to Prestozon. It's not something that Amazon has traditionally stored. So when you connect to Prestozon, you probably know that we import the 60 days of data that Amazon saves. But for the keyword bid history, that's something that we're going to start saving and tracking for you from the time that you connect to an account. Dierk, we do have one quick question. What do the colors represent again? So you can see kind of in the breakdown, and I think you can also arrow over in the chart. By the way, Dierk, I'm happy that we both are prefer the bar chart. I really like the stacked bar chart.
I will say during development, at one point we said, hey, what if we switch these and have bar chart be default? But it didn't end up making it all the way through, but maybe we'll do that one day.
Okay, if you guys have an opinion on that, just let us know if you think the bar chart should be the default or switch back to yeah, I just feel like the bar chart has a bit more oomph to it. Plus the colors are a lot easier to see. So if you have feelings on that, let us know. Again, the question was what do the colors represent? So Dierk, do you want to just touch on how it relates to each of those targets that we have down below, and that you can see that they're all the exact matches for Magic Wand, but they are different because?
Well, they just denote the different entities. So, all of these keywords are different targets. Some of them are I think they all happen to be in different ad groups within the same campaign, but these are all different targets. And so we color code each target and then show you the data for each of those targets stacked. So the colors themselves are sort of arbitrary, but they're matched up entity to entity.
Great. Well, should we Should we dive in? Should we go to the real life examples?
Yeah, absolutely. So let me switch over here and go to present mode. All right. How does that look? Can you see everything, Sanaz?
I can.
Okay, great. Well, let's hop into the first slide. So this first slide is sort of the base case. This is our search term isolated example. And I love this example because it really highlights why bid management works in general across Amazon PPC. So here you can see there's only one color here. So, to the earlier question about what the color coding means, if you only have one target associated with a search term, you're only going to see one color. And so you can see there's only this blue color in the bottom right. And this is super cool because as you can see on the bottom, we're tracking impressions, right? And there's this drastic drop in impressions right around June 2nd. And what's really interesting about this is there isn't a corresponding drop in, it drops a little bit, but there's not a huge drop in spend and sales, and definitely not the scope you would think when you're cutting your impressions in more than half. And so what that means is there's a drastic increase in CTR, right? Because your clicks and your spend is maintained despite the impression drop. You've reduced your exposure. So, again, we talk about search term isolation a lot, and we have a blog post about search term isolation. If you haven't read it, you should definitely go check it out.
Come on, everyone's read that by now. If you haven't, you've definitely been missing out. And if anyone else is struggling to read the designations on the line graph, by the way, or you're not used to looking at this for some reason, the top kind of lighter blue is spend, and then the other kind of darker blue is your spend 7-day average. So you have a point of comparison. And then in this case, we're looking at sales, which you can see is the drop down on the right-hand side, with the darker pink being your sales versus the lighter pink being your sales 7-day average. So we're always doing a bit of a comparison so that you can see, hey, how's my performance at this moment compared to the 7-day rolling average? So Dierk, we do have a quick question.
Yeah,
is
go for it.
Term isolation only for exact keywords?
Yes, because you can't have the idea behind search term isolation is having a one-to-one relationship between a search term and a keyword. And so you can't have that. You can't have that one-to-one relationship if you're using a broad or a phrase match. There are places for broad and phrase. So we have broad match or phrase match in our research campaigns because broad and phrase is really good at finding you new relevant keywords, but it's not good at bid management. And so really you should be doing all of your bid management on exact match keywords that are isolated, so you have a one-to-one relationship, search term to keyword.
So basically, search term isolation is only for exact keywords, because when you get to the one-to-one relationship between an exact keyword, an exact keyword in your search term, then you're isolated, right?
Yeah, the isolation portion is, I don't, the reason I'm hesitant to say that is because you're still using broad and phrase. You're just not using it to optimize your bid. Broad and phrase is meant as a research tool, as a way to bring in new keywords. But from a bid management standpoint, in search term isolation, you're only managing your bid on the exact match keywords.
Great. Well, hopefully we've answered your question. Dierk, back to
Yeah, great. So I think that was a really good kind of sidebar about search term isolation. And so kind of hopping back into this example, when you have a higher bid, you're going to reach more people, right? You're going to get more impressions, but those impressions aren't necessarily strong, right? And they're not necessarily relevant. And so this really highlights that, right? That you cut your impressions in half, really more than in half, and yet you're still maintaining your sales and spend level. And what this helps with is, you don't really see it in this case, but there are examples where you're getting like a rare, $5 click or something, but most of your clicks are $1. And if you shave those top level, really expensive clicks that are really driving up your CPC, you can really drive efficiency. And so this is just a really cool view that kind of highlights why bid management in general is important, and why it works. And so now I'm gonna change gears and go to the next one. This might be my favorite visualization, because this is something that I see a lot, and I wasn't able to really kind of show it in the platform in the past. And so this is one of the worst situations that you can get into when you're not isolated, where your search term is humming along, and then if you look, and I know it's a short time period, but you can see it in other times too. You're humming along, and then all of a sudden for a time period, your sales disappear, or all of a sudden your efficiency is just awful, and you're trying to explain why. And so if you look here on the right, you can see this pink line for May, I think that's May, right? May 22nd, May 23rd, and May 24th. All of a sudden there are 0 sales during that 3-day period. And in the past, you might see that and not really have a way to explain what happened, especially if it's a longer period of time, right? Maybe you go a week and you're like, why haven't I gotten any sales on my best search term in a week? And I've actually had this, auditing an account where we actually found this scenario where all of a sudden one of the best search terms, just the performance went through the floor. And we were able to figure out that the search term actually was, for that week period, was only showing up in a non-relevant campaign. And so it was still showing up a little bit, it was still getting spend, which confused the whole issue. But because it was showing up in a non-relevant campaign, its metrics just were absolutely awful. And this is a great example of something similar going on. So you can see down at the bottom where if you look to the corresponding dates, right, May 22nd, May 23rd, and May 24th, you can see that all of a sudden blue disappears, right? Blue goes away, and the orange, but more so the red, takes over. And if you look at red, red has double the ACOS of blue. And over those 3-day periods, that 3-day period, you get no sales while blue is not in the mix. And so this kind of shows you, again, there would be no way to visually see this immediately. You'd be able to find it through a lot of investigation and extracting out, different exports and trying to read the tea leaves and everything. But this, it's a click of a button. You click that chart, you go, what happened to my search term over those 3 days? And boom, there it is. I need to make sure that blue is showing up, because that's where my sales are coming from. And so I love this chart. It's a short example, but I was able to find this, and I've seen this time and time again, where search terms fall into the wrong campaign because they're not isolated, and you have this metric drop for a period of time, or even permanently, right? And then you have to go back and figure out, oh, what happened to that keyword that was performing for me in the past.
So Dierk, when you said non-relevant campaign, how would you define that? I know you probably just literally defined it with, oh, your keyword was somewhere that you didn't expect it to be. But what do you consider a non-relevant campaign, just to make sure everyone understands?
Yeah, so I'm staring at my daughter's hand puppets right now, and I've got a monkey and a giraffe here, right? And so maybe your best search term is monkey hand puppet, and you're running with monkey hand puppet in the monkey hand puppet campaign, and it's doing really, really well. Maybe you also have a giraffe hand puppet campaign. Now, if you talk to me, I would argue that you should group those because they're close enough that you should just have them in one campaign. But let's say they're separate and they're 2 separate campaigns. And maybe you drop the bid on monkey hand puppet so much in the monkey hand puppet campaign that it's no longer showing up. And you also have the keyword monkey hand puppet in the giraffe campaign, because every so often someone will search a monkey hand puppet and they'll buy a giraffe hand puppet instead. Well, all of a sudden, if the bid goes too low on monkey hand puppet, then the giraffe hand puppet campaign is going to be getting all the impressions for the monkey hand puppet keyword. But from a consumer standpoint, they're going to be seeing giraffe hand puppet. And yeah, maybe a couple people will buy, but the vast majority of people are going to say, well, no, I wanted to see the monkey hand puppet, and I want to go and get that instead. And that also highlights something else. This goes a little bit off topic, but in terms of grouping, grouping ASINs, sometimes people might come and say, hey, well, that example, you always tell us to group ASINs, which I do. But in that example, if you've got the giraffe and the monkey both in the same ad group, then sometimes people are going to see the giraffe hand puppet when you search monkey hand puppet. And that absolutely is the case, but Amazon is actually going to do that decision making for you, and they're pretty good at it. They're going to take relevance into account if they've got multiple ASINs in a single ad group on a single target, and they're going to show the one that they think is most likely to convert, which is most likely going to be the monkey hand puppet. And so even though if you have them in the same ad group, there is a chance the giraffe is going to show up. Quite frankly, if you have them in different campaigns, there's also a chance that the giraffe is going to show up. But at least if you have them grouped, it's a lot simpler, and you can let Amazon make that decision a lot easier. And there's just fewer pitfalls. So that's a little kind of sidebar about why we suggest grouping ASINs a lot. But that's kind of the main crux behind that. But back to your original question, it's non-relevant campaigns are exactly that, right? You might have search terms that slightly overlap on different campaigns, but they're much more relevant on one than another. And if they fall off on the more relevant one, they can start surfacing on the less relevant one, and your metrics are going to drop because you're not going to have as much click through and not going to have as much conversion.
Right, and that's unique because we're looking at search terms across the account as opposed to just within a specific campaign, right, Dierk?
Yeah, I actually had to deal with this not too long ago, where I did an outside of the platform audit for a good friend and agency partner, and I don't know if I'm ever going to offer that again, because going through the search term reports and trying to pull out, even I'm pretty good with Excel, but trying to pull out all the different search terms across the whole account, I didn't realize how spoiled I was being able to look at the platform through Prestozon every day rather than having to pull it out of those reports.
It's good for you to feel the pain.
Absolutely.
I would choose the monkey hand puppet, but I'm thinking that if the monkey hand puppet was competing with Sophie the giraffe, that would be a whole different thing versus a giraffe hand puppet. But that's just my kids toy analysis. So
that gets a little outside our wheelhouse. I think that gets more into your full stack agency, listings and all that, but I see where you're coming from.
We'll save that for a whole nother webinar on kids toys and search terms.
Absolutely. So let's hop over to the next one before we grind to a halt talking about hand puppets. I really like, I like all of these charts. This is such a cool visualization, and I can't get enough of it. But this is a really cool one because it highlights, again, why search term isolation is so important. And so here what we have going on is you have red just kind of plugging along, right? And the scale isn't crazy. It's not really good, but you're running at a 38% ACOS. And then all of a sudden around May 13th, you have blue start really taking over impressions. And as you notice, blue is a broad match. So all of a sudden you are no longer isolated. And all of these metrics, it should be noted, these are not the metrics just for this target, right? This is a broad match. So there could be other search terms that it's firing on. These metrics are for this search term on this target. And so what you see here is blue takes over vastly, takes over almost all the impressions on red, and eventually takes over all of them. And it's running at double the ACOS. And so even though you're getting scale, right, you are getting some more sales because you've got this broad match running, presumably at a much higher bid, but you lose control on this search term. And you really destroy your ACOS. And so again, if I were looking as an account manager, and if this were one of my highest spend search terms, I would be looking through the search term, the search term performance. I'd be like, what happened to this? It was running at 30, 40% ACOS. And now all of a sudden it's running at 70. What did I do? And again, a couple months ago, you wouldn't be able to easily diagnose this and just click on this button and go, oh, this is what happened. It just switched. And then now you can take meaningful action. You can possibly negate this search term in the ad group that has this broad match to make sure that it doesn't show up again. And then hopefully red would pick up, or you could possibly, raise the bid on red, or you can do some combination of the both, combination of the two in order to get red back in the game. Maybe you want to raise bid to try to get those impressions that blue was getting, but hopefully in a place where you're also getting the efficiency that you were getting from red before blue took over.
So Dierk, when you're looking at this chart, where do your eyes go first? Because my eyes are drawn straight to the gaps in the bar chart, where for May, I think it's 6th and 11th, there's nothing there, and then it's all red and then blue. But do you start by looking at the line graph at the top of the screen and work your way down? Is there not like a method to your madness? Is it just different depending on the scenario?
Most likely you're already clicking into this visualization because you've seen something like the line graph on top, right? So a lot of times when I'm going through and doing an audit, I'm looking for, and you've probably heard me say this on webinars or
inflection points.
Yeah, exactly. I'm looking for inflection points. And so more than likely, I've looked at the account as a whole, and I've already seen this shift, because there's some accounts out there that they might be running $30,000 in spend, and as much as 30 or 40% of that spend could be running through a single search term, right? That could be their bread and butter. And if that's occurring and you have an issue on the account and it tracks back to that single search term, it's so important to be able to figure out what's going on. So to answer your question, the line graph is important, but typically I'm already aware of the metrics behind the line graph because that's the reason I'm clicking in. I've already seen a big change. I've already seen my ACOS skyrocket, or I've already seen my sales drop to the floor, and I'm trying to figure out why. So by the time I get to the search term chart, typically I'm really dialed into this bottom chart, because what I want to know is what happened to the underlying entities that are firing on this search term. And what really catches my eye, sometimes the gaps will, but really what catches my eye on this chart in particular is this stark transition,
right,
where it goes red, 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 and then all of a sudden blue takes over.
Yeah, that definitely jumps out, as well as the 70% ACOS, and being that it's high up on the list, that means that you're spending a good amount on that, since we're always sorting from the highest spend to the lowest spend so that you can focus on the most important targets. So I have a question for you, Dierk. Mike wanted to know, can it be overall detrimental to your campaigns to have too many exact keyword crossovers?
Too many exact keyword crossovers.
I think you talked about having, multiple exact matches where there may be some overlap.
If you've got overlap on exact matches in a single ad group, just pause or archive one of them, is the short answer. Because you just don't need it. It's just adding clutter, it's adding complication to your bid management, and it's not adding any value in terms of getting a different market or anything like that. Search term isolation is the sort of ideal, right? And something that I say a lot, there's the old military saying, right, where it's like a battle plan never survives contact with the enemy, right? And so search term isolation is this theory, and it's a great theory, and sometimes in practice, the waters get a little bit muddy, but really the only time you should have the same exact match keyword is if you're targeting something different. So a lot of times what I consider, okay overlap is like if you're running sponsored brands and then you're running sponsored products, right? If you've got the same exact match there, that's fine, because those are targeting different impressions. They're different placements, entirely. If you're running kind of top of search strategies, you might have a top of search and then a normal search on the same exact match keyword. That's fine. But if you're just running multiple keywords, and also keep in mind equivalences, right? So, back to our hand puppet example, if you've got hand puppet and hand puppets, as far as Amazon is concerned, those are the same keywords. And so you can archive one if they're in the same ad group. If you've got, or go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say that's a great point. It's I know whenever we do the webinars, it's always a bit surprising for people, and sometimes we look at quite sophisticated accounts, and it just adds a lot of clutter and complexity that you don't need, because there's no added value, and Amazon's gonna look at them as equivalents.
Right.
Okay, so we have another question for you, but
okay, great.
Want to wrap up? Was there something that you were going to say to kind of?
Let's go with the other question. It might come back to me.
Okay. Right. I'm throwing you off your game today.
That's okay.
So we've got two questions. One is, how are we using this bar chart to negation? So I don't know if that's something that you want to jump in the platform and show after we do the slides, or if you want to talk through it. But basically, like, how do you take action? So now you've seen this and you want to negate.
Yeah, so there's no negate button right on the search term chart, but that's one of the nice things about the fact that we chose to have this come out in a separate tab, so that you've got this visualization on Magic Wand, for instance, and because we had it come out in a new tab, you've still got whatever settings you've saved. So you can go and say, okay, this is what's happening on Magic Wand. I know that I want to negate this red one here, for instance. And so I can scroll over and I can say, oh, this is my wand group 5. And then I can hop right back over here. It's already saved because it opened in a new tab. I don't have to like hit back or anything. I can come to the negate, and then I can say, okay, I want to only negate, in wand group 5, for instance. And so that is kind of the workflow that I would do as I'm kind of going through back and forth.
That's great. That's really helpful, Dierk. So
that was a great question, because again, this is like, I walk through this all the time and I'm doing this, but I've never thought of that in that term. So thank you so much for that question, because that's a great sort of, that's a great thing to highlight.
Yeah, hopefully you followed all the flipping, because Dierk does have a couple of different tabs open right now for the platform. If that's not a way that you're using Prestozon yet, it probably will be much more with the search term chart. It's often nice to just have multiple windows open to be able to flip back and forth and go from the detail and then say, all right, great, I want to negate Magic Wand 5. So as Dierk just demonstrated, being able to go in and just go back to the page that you launched from, and hit the neg button to have that option to take action. And obviously, as you all probably know, you can pick exactly where you want to create those negatives, or if it's a situation where you're iffy about negating it, you can always reduce the bid and see if you can get some sales at an ACoS that makes sense for you. Dierk, we have a question from one of our author friends. So let's see if this is one that you can answer quickly. We sell about 120 different books, which have all got very similar search terms, guitar book, for example. We try to group them into different genres, rock, jazz, blues. There will be a lot of exact keyword crossover between different campaigns, but I can't see a way to avoid that. What do you think? So for example, each genre campaign will have a similar search term within that: jazz guitar book, rock guitar book, blues guitar book, for example. Now, I don't know, I might take a guess at this. I might take a guess and say, if the search terms are similar, you'd group them together. But the genres of music are so individual. What would you do, Dierk?
So I would go back to something that I mentioned earlier, which is it's in Amazon's best interest to surface what they think is most likely going to convert. And so they use relevance in your ASIN description in order to surface the most likely conversion. And so if you have all of them grouped, even though, yes, sometimes someone's going to search jazz guitar and they're going to get rock, the rock guitar book, most of the time they're going to get the jazz guitar book, even if they're grouped in the same ad group, in the same campaign. And if you contrast that with if you've got them all in 100 different campaigns, well, guess what? If you've got them in 100 campaigns and you're not able to 100% say that you've got no keyword overlap, then the same problem is still going to happen. If you've got the two separate campaigns, one for rock and one for jazz, but you've got jazz terms in the rock campaign, then guess what? Sometimes that rock book is going to show up for jazz search terms. And so either way, you're letting Amazon decide, because Amazon's going to decide between the two separate keywords, or they're going to decide between the two separate ASINs within a single keyword. Either way, Amazon is deciding, but in one scenario, you've got one campaign that you have to manage. In another scenario, you've got 100 campaigns that you've got to manage. In my opinion, I'd rather be, if Amazon's going to make that decision for me either way, I'd rather be managing the one campaign and get some time back in my life.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, our philosophy when it comes to Amazon PPC campaign management is keep it simple until you need to add complexity, because the more campaigns you have, the more management there is. And if you can keep it simple and straightforward, it's going to be a lot easier to control and drive efficiency and performance. And to Dierk's point, this is an area where Amazon advertising is very well aligned with your interests. They want to help you generate sales. So letting them kind of have that choice based on all of the additional data that they know about the consumer and what they've clicked on and what they've looked at, Amazon's going to be pretty good at putting the right listing and the right ASIN forward. Dierk, was there anything else you wanted to add on that, or can I throw another question at you?
Yeah, I want to throw one other thing in too, is there's also other ways to separate out your campaigns. And so something else that a lot of people have had success with is start with everything grouped, and then let's see which ASINs rise to the top in terms of spend. Because you might have one ASIN that's 90% of your spend, and then another 10 ASINs that are only 10%. And then it might make sense to just have two campaigns, two campaign sets, right? One campaign set that is your 90% of your spend, and then one campaign set that is the other 10 ASINs. And then you're just being smart about your time, right? You're focused on that one that's driving most of your sales separately. And you're really being careful about that and managing it separately. But then all the other ones, they're still important, but you can group them because they're just not as, kind of big movers and shakers as that one that's driving most of your sales.
Got it. And one quick point of clarification from Joseph, the ASIN description, is that equal to the product description?
Yes.
It seems too obvious to say that, but
yeah. Yeah.
Like, is this a trick question? It is not a trick question. His concern is that he's got competing exact keywords in different genre campaigns. So that's maybe something to dig into.
I would give the caveat too that Amazon doesn't tell anyone how their relevance calculation works exactly. So a lot of the things that we're talking about in terms of using Amazon's black box to your benefit, that is through us analyzing the data, that's through inference, that's through a lot of things. There is no place that you can go where they will definitively say, we use these fields in order to choose relevance. All we know is relevance is a factor, and they calculate relevance somehow using the information they have on your product.
Yeah, there's a lot of variables that go into that.
Yes.
A lot of conspiracy theories around that. But I like to think of it as Amazon's magic, because they know so much about us as consumers. And If you're ever shopping for someone that's not yourself, I definitely recommend an incognito browser for that so that you don't get targeted for all of the random stuff that you might be buying for someone else that you wouldn't generally be shopping for. Dierk, we've got another question for you. I've been creating my campaigns in Amazon so that I can have custom text and just dumping all the keywords in broad, phrase, and exact, and then hitting automate on Prestozon at the ACOS percentage that's desired. Is that a bad strategy?
So I have a lot of question marks in terms of exactly how you're doing it. So there's actually a blog post that you should check out on our blog that talks about this exactly. The blog post is called How to Leverage Prestozon's Automation Services with Custom Text Ads. To give you a short answer, you're doing the right thing in terms of if you want to use custom text ads, make them in Amazon, and then you can come over to Prestozon and still use our bid automation. I think the step that you might be missing, just based on that short explanation, and maybe this is not the case, but it sounds like you do not have rules set up. And if you don't have rules set up, and especially if you don't have the rules set up in this exact structure like it is here in this screenshot, the issue that you're going to have is, you might have the broad and the broad, and you might have the exact and the exact, and you might have the auto running, but if you don't have the subsequent negatives in the correct place, then you're not going to be isolated and you're going to have a ton of overlap. And so you might see spend run rampant because you've just got so much coverage with all of these different keywords. So I would highly suggest check out this blog post. You're probably doing this 90%, and then maybe this blog post will help you, just sort of tweak to get that next 10%.
Great. In all fairness, he did say he was hitting automate on Prestozon. So could be maybe, there's some rules that are being automated, but it's more likely bid automation. So that's great advice, Dierk. For anyone that hasn't set up or dug into the rules, it's incredibly powerful, especially with the new advanced features that we have where you can set thresholds for your number of orders as opposed to the default of one. You can set an ACOS percentage for promoting performing search terms. So there's a lot of great strategies that you can use with the rules because they're incredibly flexible. All right, Dierk, back to you.
All right, let's get back. I think I've only got a couple more examples, and then I'm sure we'll have a million more questions on QA. But so, just to run through a couple more examples, I think we've made it pretty clear, how cool and interesting this visualization is. But so right here, we've got, just kind of showing you the clarity of movement, across an account. So I just love this. Like, I just think it's just very visually pleasing to see as this search term goes through the different stages of its life, right? It starts off in the auto campaign and you're not getting a lot of scale here, right? Because it's just part of this much larger target. And so it's not really optimized. And then all of a sudden, probably right around June 1st or May 31st, it gets a conversion. And the conversion drops it into this exact match. And now it's actually still running in another auto campaign, probably a new auto campaign that just started that has a different rule set. And then it goes kind of in this hybrid style. And then presumably there's another sale to trigger a slightly different rule. And then you get this dropping into this exact match where it's now kind of consistent. And it's just very cool to kind of see how this worked. This account happens to be a pretty complicated account with a bunch of different rules on it that are doing different things, but just really neat. And you can see it up above, how this line graph kind of plays out, right? It's just, very kind of low sales and spend, and then all of a sudden, or low impressions and spend, and then all of a sudden, everything kind of flies up. So just really interesting, and just, again, not a visualization that you'll get anywhere. And then finally, I wanted to wrap up. This is actually something that I just found this morning that I thought was kind of cool, just because it actually looks really boring at first. But just to show you some other things that you can do with the search term chart is, for instance, giving yourself context on other ad types within an account. So when I looked at this, I was kind of hoping to find some really cool thing and in the search term chart, and I was like, oh, this is kind of boring. It's just this blue target is taking up everything, and there's no real motion here. But when I dug in, orange and red are actually not sponsored products, they're sponsored brand. And so when I started looking at this, I go, oh, well, sponsored products is generally doing great, right? They're at 4% ACoS, which I'm sure everyone on this webinar would be happy to have. It's running at 4% ACoS. It's getting great volume. It's overall just doing really, really well. So what action items can I glean from this? Well, what I can glean from this is sponsored brands is not getting very much traffic on this search term. But I know for a fact that there's tons of traffic to be had, right? Even though sponsored products, by definition, there's multiple placements that you can get in sponsored products. So there's never going to be a 1-to-1 ratio of impressions for sponsored products to sponsored brands, just because there are more impressions, there's more placements in sponsored products. So they're always going to be higher, all things being equal. But this is a huge spread. And so what this tells me is, hey, maybe there's opportunity to raise bid on sponsored brands because clearly they can afford it, right? They're running in single-digit ACoS. And so maybe there's opportunity here to really drive sponsored brands because you're clearly not getting all the impressions that are out there. And again, that sort of insight is not necessarily easy to find because, especially if you're just starting up sponsored brands, you don't know what the ecosystem looks like. You don't know what's going on. And so this view gives you the opportunity to leverage something that's currently running, in this case, sponsored products, and say, okay, well, this is the same search term, so it's the same customer, but what's happening on the other ad types? What's happening on sponsored brands? What's happening in sponsored display? What's happening? Product targeting probably won't have too much overlap depending, but it just opens up this whole opportunity to look at your account more holistically in a really granular way. So I love this one, and I was really excited when I found it.
And Dierk, maybe we should have done this at the very beginning, but just super quick, what are the different types of targets that you can look at in the search term chart? So I know that we use targets, but there are different types of targets.
Yeah, so right now you can look at anything we display on the search term level. So that's traditional search terms, which will show up in sponsored products or sponsored brands. And then you can also look at ASINs that will show up in auto campaigns or product targeting targets. So anything that shows up in the search term level side of things. Sponsored display, I don't think that we have any kind of search term level data. As sponsored display continues to evolve, I'm sure we'll start getting stuff that will go in there. But yeah, right now it's, you can look at ASINs and that's great to see where you should target in terms of product targeting. And then you can look at traditional search terms.
Yeah, I'm super excited about the future of sponsored display. I know we're at time. We're happy to take.
Oh, really?
I know it went fast. Happy to take another couple of minutes if there are any additional questions. Dierk, there was one question that I wanted to get back to. So maybe you could just jump into the platform real quick. Lisa had asked, how can you show how to change your bid within the campaign again? So I know there's a couple of places where you can change the bid. If you want to just highlight that real quick within the platform.
Yeah, so I'm just shifting over here to the Keyword Explorer. You can see all of your different keywords. And then if you click the chart icon on a keyword, that will bring you to the keyword detail page, and you can change the bid here. You can also, obviously we want you to be using our bid optimization if it makes sense for you. So, here are bid suggestions. So you can either do these individually. You can do these with bulk actions, or you could ideally, at some point automate, and then we would be applying those suggestions for you. So those are really the two ways that you can change bid. I think just to cover all of our bases, because you did say the question, how do you change bid in the campaign? If you're referring to auto campaigns, we don't do any bid management on auto campaigns. And that's both on the suggestion level, and it's also in sort of the keyword management level. And the reason for that is just that we want you to get away from auto campaigns. As we talked about search term isolation in the beginning of this, we think you should be managing your bid on your manual targets, ideally exact match manual targets.
All right, well, I can't believe that the hour went by so fast. I'm gonna put a quick end of survey or end of webinar survey up for you guys. We'd love to hear your feedback. If there are suggestions that you have or other questions that you have, anything that you need, definitely feel free to reach out to support@prestozon.com. If you want to chat about our partnerships on the agency or enterprise side, feel free to reach out to me directly. It's sanaz@prestozon.com. And if you didn't get enough of the search term chart, we've got a great blog post on that, obviously. We say that a lot for everything, but there is a great blog post that we put together around the search term chart that kind of talks through it a bit more. And if you have questions or you've got a chart that you want the team to take a look at, let us know. Oh, Dierk, we have a two-part question. Oh, I think you must have planted this one because the attendee is anonymous. Two-part question, why? One, why is Dierk so awesome? And two, how long will it take to get his knowledge?
I was born this way. And you can have this knowledge because you have the tool to do it. I've been working in e-commerce and e-commerce kind of strategy and solutions for many, many years, but I've really only been digging into Amazon PPC specifically on the advertising strategy side for, just over a year. And I attribute it all to, first of all, having been and a lot of resources at Prestozon, but really it's the platform. The ability to see Amazon PPC using this platform makes it so easy to understand and like really kind of dig into what's going on. And that visualization is why, we're able to kind of learn these things and get these insights.
And Dierk just has such enthusiasm and passion for it. When we started here, support was a little bit more just support. And it's really evolved because what we really enjoy and what I think provides a lot more value other than, oh, where is this button? Or, can you help me with this or that, is really just digging into the strategy. Here's what I want to achieve. Here are my challenges. Here are my goals. Here's what I'm looking at. Is this how you would look at it? Is there a different way to approach this in Prestozon? So never hesitate to reach out with more advanced questions about how to achieve your goals or to confirm your understanding of what you're looking at within the platform. So with that, I guess we should wrap up. Dierk is awesome. Our whole team is pretty awesome, but Dierk's definitely taught me a lot over time and has been just a great partner to our clients. He is also the brain behind a lot of the blog posts. If you can't tell, they usually have some sort of funny little image that Dierk's created from his imagination, which is always fun.
I am not a graphic designer.
But you are a PPC strategist. So
yeah.
All right, we are now 6 minutes over and we all hate being late. Thank you all for spending this time with us. Everyone will receive the recording who signed up for the webinar. And also we will post this to YouTube as well so that you've got access on it there. And we went live on Facebook. So if you want to see us again or you want to watch it again, you can also access it on our Facebook page. I think that's all. Thank you, everyone, and have a great rest of your day and rest of your week.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.